OSC 202 students. This is Bob Jackson. I'm back with you today to go on to chapter 20. Now, chapter 20, I'm doing just a good bit different, not just a little bit different. I do not like the content that is in your textbook. Okay, in fact, I think from this point on through, I probably use the textbook that much. The biggest problem with the textbook is it's too high level for elementary education. And I did this in SE 201 with a couple chapters as well. I just feel that it's a better move to go the direction that I'm going, to give you something that you're going to actually be able to use as elementary teachers. Okay, but with chapter 20, or technically what's chapter 20, you'll see it's not really chapter 20 out of your book. I'm using a different source. But we're going into life sciences, biology. Okay, we will do kind of an introduction to biology now, and then we'll do a chapter or so on what we call ecology and environmental science kind of area. Okay, but I am going to, like I say, I'm moving away from your textbook to something that I believe is a lot more, will be a lot better for using for elementary and giving you a good background and basis in the content that you're really going to teach. Okay, so anyway, this is it. If you take a look at the PowerPoint that I'm sharing here, you'll see the main concepts that I want to cover are characteristics of life, principles of biology, just the basic principles of biology. Talk about some interdependence of living things, and that's actually where you're getting into ecology. Okay, and actually environmental science. We'll talk just a little bit on the organization of living things, and that's really getting into more the kind of a structure of living things, what makes up living things, from base level of cells up to where you talk populations and communities and biomes and stuff like that. And then we talk just a little bit about the evolution of life. Now, we are not talking about evolution as far as humans. We're talking about how animals have changed through time. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. Okay, what characteristics are unique to all living things? So when you're going to be teaching in the elementary classroom, one thing you want to do is kind of just have to introduce your students to what is living, what is not living. Okay, as far as what in the world around them, and get them to understand what it takes to be living. Okay, and then what things are not living, like devices and things around us, tools, our vehicles and stuff. That's not living, but trees and grass and birds and fish, they're all living things, and to get them to recognize, and because you get down kindergarten, first grade, and so forth, you want to get them to recognize what it is out there that is life. Okay, so here we go. All living things respond to their environment. Okay, if they can't respond to their environment, they're not going to be living very long. So that's, even you see this when you go when you go to try to pick something up, or kids all the time pick things up more than adults, it seems. They'll go out there and they're not afraid to pick that snake up, but that snake's going to respond. So they're going to respond and bite them, or it's going to move away. That's a response, and that's the things you can talk to kids about, even when they pet their pets, whether they're petting their dog or their cat or their whatever. That critter responds to what they do. Okay, that's what an animal does. That's what a living thing does. Even plants respond. If you do not water the plants in your house, they're going to die. Okay, you see them start wilting and things happening to them. So you see a response, whether it's living or not. And that's where you can play around in class, and a lot of you at times will have plants in your class that you'll have kids grow. Well, you teach them that when you water the plant responds. Okay, when you give the plant good sunlight, it responds. Okay, if you put it in the dark, it doesn't do as well. If you put it in sunlight, it does well, it responds. Okay, all living things grow and develop. Okay, in order to stay alive, they got to grow, they got to develop. Okay, and they can see that. That's where it's fun with kids to grow babies up from baby chicks to chickens to baby ducks to baby fish to big fish to puppies to dogs and kitties to cats. Okay, it's fun to do that with kids. Okay, so and that's where they're seeing in action. That's what you can talk with them is how they watch young babies. Okay, even they could be pigs on a farm. Okay, or calves or horses, where they look at and talk to them about what they look like when they're first born and what some of the growth and development that they go through. But all living things go through some growth and development. Okay, all living things reproduce offspring. Okay, so if you're going to keep on having horses, you got to keep on, they got to keep reproducing. Okay, if you're going to keep on even having flowers, then you're planting seeds to get more. And that's what you teach to kids is, like with flowers and plants, your seeds are the offspring, that's giving rise to your offspring. Okay, and you want to teach your kids that. So all living things reproduce offspring. All living things pass on traits to their offspring. And that's where we talk heredity. So if you take a seed from this flower, what's it going to grow? It's going to grow another flower pretty similar. Might be a different color, but it's the same kind of flower. If a German Shepherd has puppies, you expect to see German Shepherd puppies. If it's mated with a collie, then you get something in between, but it's still heredity, and you can talk that, show kids. All living things maintain homeostasis and have a metabolism. These are a little bit hard to get younger kids to understand, but you can talk to them about when they got sick, what happens, and that's where you can get them to. You can talk about body temperature, and when they have a fever, what happens? Their body gets hot. Well, that's homeostasis getting out of whack. Okay, or when their tummy hurts, they drink something or they do something and their tummy hurts, then that's where the homeostatic condition of their body's gotten a little out of whack, so they feel a little pain. Okay, they feel pain, they feel fever, they feel uneasy, what have you, and that's homeostasis and metabolism. Metabolism is the biochemistry taking place in the body. You could talk that when they eat. What happens to the food? Well, it's digested. It's been taken up into the metabolism of their body. And all living things do that, whether it's plants or animals. Whereas you feed your dog food, but what do you feed a plant? Well, it's got the soil and you're also giving it water. Okay. And some you'll see give them Miracle-Gro and stuff like that, where they're giving them better nourishment. Okay. All living things are made up of cells. Okay, there is one exception to that, and that's viruses. But viruses cannot live without cells because they have to live on or within cells. Okay, so these are the key characteristics of all living things. It'd be nice for you to teach kids. Okay, all living things respond, all living things grow and develop, all living things reproduce to make young. They're going to grow up into adults and have more kiddos. Okay, all living things pass traits on to their offspring. That's heredity, as we know it. All living things maintain homeostasis and metabolism, and all living things are made up of cells. Except for, you can say if you want to bring them, but most of the younger ones don't understand much anyway, is viruses really aren't made up of cells, but they live on or in cells. We do also have some organisms that are single cell. Okay, where they're not made up of bunches of cells. Okay, so, and then here it is on a chart. Okay, moving on. What are the four underlying unifying principles of biology? Okay, the first one is the cell theory. Okay, and that comes right off just what was talking about all life is made up of cells. All living things are made up of cells. And all living cells come from other living cells. And that's really the cell theory. Okay. So when I get cut, then when I heal, the new cells form are coming from the cells before them. Okay. Gene theory, all living things are controlled by genes. Okay. In them somewhere, even a virus is made up of some genes. Not near as many genes in a virus as there are in us. But genes contain the DNA that codes, that has our genetic code. Okay, and what you can teach kids is the gene theory is like a computer program for us, or a computer program for the dog, or a computer program for a plant. Okay, it is the genetic information that's going to tell it what to do and also controls what it looks like. Okay, very similar on a computer. Homeostasis applies to organisms and then environment. Okay, it applies to both the organisms like me, or a dog, or a cat, or a turtle, or a tree, or whatever. Okay, but it can also apply to an entire pond, or an entire field, or an entire woodland. Things had to stay in a pretty much homeostatic state for the best interest of the all. Okay, for my body to be in good health, there has to be a homeostasis there. For the body of my dog to be in good health, there has to be a homeostasis there. For things to be going well in the yard around my house, as far as plants go, there has to be a homeostasis there. If not, like when we haven't gotten any rain for a long time, what happens to the grass? It starts turning brown, okay, and dying. Okay, so because you're losing somewhat the homeostasis. So you can see homeostatic conditions change somewhat, but no matter what, you tend to go back to that homeostatic state in order to keep that area looking the same, even within our bodies. Okay, if we feel the best when our body's at the best homeostasis possible. Okay, when you have infections or things going in your body that throws off the homeostatic condition, then you feel it, you know it. Okay, then evolution. Okay, the fourth and final unifying principle is we have evolution. This is it, and we're talking animals, is a change in characteristic of living things through time. Okay, so back however many million years ago, you wouldn't expect all the critters on the earth to look exactly like they do now because they evolved through time. Okay, but we even see that we see it on a small scale now, particularly like the way we breed different breeds of dogs and have dogs like Labradoodles now. They weren't natural, but we made them, and there's several other breeds. Okay, we wouldn't have boxers, and we wouldn't have uh, each of the different species of dogs if it wasn't for how we kind of selectively breeded dogs, and you got these other new breeds. Okay, that's the same thing as evolution, except with the dogs we kind of controlled it. Okay, so that's the unifying principles of biology. Okay, all living things depend on the environment around them to survive. So you can see all kinds of things in the environment. Like here, these wolves, this is in Yellowstone. And if you haven't got a chance, go to Yellowstone sometime, you need to go. Seeing wolves is cool, but if you want to see the wolves in Yellowstone, you need to get up early, or you need to go driving around just before sunset. And you can see the wolves. They're pretty cool. But they're pretty elusive too. They don't care too much to see us. It helps if you have some binoculars or a spotting scope. But there are a whole lot more wolves there now than what there was 30 years ago because they reintroduced them. But it's pretty cool. And they're in a winter environment. And that's what just showing the different, I'm trying to show different environments you can see. Okay, I believe that's a lynx. There's a rattlesnake, white-tailed deer. They'll be going nuts this month right now because they're in the rut. And deer hunters are all excited right now, waiting for this cooler weather to move in. Here's a sea turtle. They're cool. These guys can get great big. Okay, but all of like this sea turtle depends on that seawater and what's in that seawater to survive, and changing chemistry really affects it. Same thing with this fish. Okay, so it's just a way to show kids the interdependence of living things. We're going to take a look at here. Okay, so what is interdependence? All life needs other life to survive. Okay, if we kill off one kind of type of critter out there in that environment, it's going to affect all of them in the environment in that area. Okay, because the web of life, and that's what Lion King was always good about teaching, the web of life. That's what we mean by interdependence, is that web of life that actually exists in there, and that's what you want to teach kids, how everything's interconnected and how polluting and doing the things that we do bad to the environment affects it all. is the thing to teach. All life needs abiotic factors from the environment like oxygen, nitrogen, soils, minerals, vitamins, and water. So it's not just living things, try to say here. So that's where a plant needs to be planted in good soil so it gets its nutrients from that soil. Okay, those are abiotic factors. Okay, but then we need oxygen. Plants need nitrogen as well. Okay, without good nitrogen in the soils, plants don't look as green, don't look as healthy. And that's where nitrogen's provided by adding things like Miracle-Gro and fertilizers to stuff. Okay, those are abiotic factors. But then when you talk animals interacting, then that's biotic factors. Okay, interdependent relationships include symbiosis, predator-prey dynamics, mutualism, and a competition between species. Okay, now then we're not going to spend a bunch of time on this chapter here, but we'll get into ecology. We're going to go into food chains and food webs, talking predator-prey, mutualism, and competition a whole lot more. Okay, but just right now, what we're doing is introducing that as an interdependence of living things causes all these to have to take place. Okay, because what do wolves eat? Wolves eat things like elk. Wolves eat things like rabbits. Okay, that's just going to happen. Okay, they'll eat deer. Okay, bears will do the same, but bears are different wolves in that they'll eat a lot of vegetation. Okay, but that's predator prey. That's dynamics. That's competition. All in action. Okay. Okay, here we go to levels of organization. Okay, and this is where we're talking about the organization of living things. Okay, so, and we're going to go from small to big and then even bigger. Okay, levels of organization starts with the cell. You can actually go smaller than that, but we started cell in this. Okay, so you started cell. The cell is a basic unit of structure and function in all living things. Now, within the cells, as you go on up to the grades, the cells have organelles and organelle systems within them, and students are to learn those at a point. They mainly get on into that in middle school. Okay, but the cell is the basic unit of structure and function that you want to teach students. Cells make up tissues. Tissues are groups of cells of the same kind. So you can give them like, you can show them the skin. That's a tissue. Okay. Skin's a tissue. You have muscle tissues, like you can cut and you see the muscle showing. Those are muscle tissues. You can take a look at leaves in the classroom, leaves on a plant. If you pull a leaf off something, there's tissues. The surface of those leaves are made up of tissues. Okay, and where they're all the same types of cells in that layer on that leaf. Okay, but those are tissues. Okay, tissues then make up organs. Okay, organs are composed of at least two or more different tissues. Okay, so then that's where you start telling them your kidneys, your heart, your lungs, your pancreas are all organs. Okay, so that's the next level up. Okay, so your body's made up of first cells, the cells make up tissues, the tissues make up organs, and then of course the organs make up organ systems. Okay, so like you could talk to kids, you got yours, most of them will be old enough by second, third grade, you talk, all right, what's your heart connected to, or what connects everything together in your circulatory system, and that's where you can talk blood vessels and so forth, and where you go arteries and veins and all that make up an organ system. To your lungs is a different, that's your respiratory system, to your digestive system. Okay, and you start getting kids to understand it takes all these systems to enable life, okay, in larger organisms. Okay, so then you have your organism level, and the organism is all the various different organisms out there. Now, these can be plants or animals. Okay, and all organisms are made up of each of these others. They have organ systems in them, they have organs, they have tissues, they have cells. Now, if you go to microscopic organisms, Some of the microscopic are multicellular, but an awful lot of like your protozoa and your bacteria and so forth, they are single cell. So you can have a level of organization of organisms that are single celled organisms. And a point in elementary, you probably get microscopes out and look at pond water and you can see some single celled organisms. Okay. Next level of organization, we want to start looking bigger than the organism itself. Okay, or organisms. So we're going to start, we'll talk populations. Like you got the deer population, you got raccoon populations, you got squirrel populations in there, you got bass populations in pond, you got bluegill populations in pond, you got turtles, snapping turtles, you got snakes, you got lions and tigers and bears. Okay, these are all populations. Populations, when you talk a population, they're all the same species. Okay, so it's all white-tailed deer, it's all raccoons, it's all box squirrels. Okay, and so forth. So that's one level. And then you get the interaction of your populations together in the environment or in an ecosystem. So you call that a community. So then the community is made up of all these other organisms in one area. Okay, so it could be a woodland, it could be a pond, it could be a pasture, it can be any of these. Okay, a community is in a defined area. Okay, it could be your backyard. Okay, but then it could be a pond or a lake or a stream or a river. Okay, and then you have the ecosystem. An ecosystem is a biological community of interacting organisms where the organisms interact with each other in the same physical environment. Okay, ecosystems can be also, and where it gets confusing for some, can be defined at any level. Like the ecosystem could be on my fingertip. All the bacteria and all grown right there on my fingertip. Okay, that's its own ecosystem in itself. But an ecosystem could be like the mountains behind me in this backdrop on me, if you see this. Could be a mountaintop as an entire ecosystem. It's so different up there in the alpine environment. Okay, that would be an ecosystem of its own because it has the same conditions throughout it, and only certain types of organisms live there. Okay, but an ecosystem can be that pond in my backyard. Okay, and it is unique, and only certain things live there. Only certain things can survive there and make it. But an ecosystem can be the woodlands where the squirrels are, where the raccoons are, where the white-tailed deer are, where the mice are, where the moles are making whole lumps in the ground. Okay, but those are ecosystems. Okay, they're ecological systems that you can define how big they are, and usually they're defined by what the area is, like a woods, like a pond, like a wetland, like a marsh, like a swamp. Okay, those are ecosystems. Okay, then biomes are much bigger. Biomes are defined like your plains, like your desert, like your tropical rainforest. Okay, they're very large ecosystems, but they're of one type. Okay, like the plains or like a desert or like subalpine area or an alpine area or a Arctic region. Those are all biomes. Okay, around here in Indiana, we have deciduous forest. Okay, that's a biome. Okay. Then you have the biosphere. The biosphere is an entire Earth. It's all the parts of the Earth where life exists, and it is outstanding. And we got to keep this thing in check. Okay, and it ranges such a diversity of life that you range from microscopic organisms like showed here to elephants to redwood trees to whales as big as we can ever imagine. Okay, and that's the entire Earth. Now, it does include land, water, and air. We have living organisms in the air, which include birds that fly and so forth. But there are also microorganisms that can be transported through the air. Okay, so the biosphere, you're talking the entire Earth. Now, they mimic that in actual biospheres that they make into like giant terrariums. There's a Biosphere 1 and 2 in Tucson, Arizona, I think it is, where people have lived in it a couple of years at a time without ever coming out. Okay, life on Earth is very diverse, including all these I said, and that's the biggest thing to talk about is the biosphere. The more diverse things are, the better. And as we do away with the diversity of things on Earth, the worse the conditions are for all overall. Okay, and then the last part here is we're going to end with the evolution of life, the history of life on Earth. Okay, and this is all just in regard to animals. Okay, not people. Okay, so life on Earth began, as we guesstimated, about 3.5 to 4 billion years ago. Okay, and it was totally different than it is now. It wouldn't have been too hospitable for us. Okay, evolution can be described as a change of the characteristics of a species over time. And all that's done is several hundred years ago is that horse, that dog, that snake doesn't look exactly like it did back then. Okay, now the thing with evolution is it takes hundreds of years and even thousands of years to see changes. But like I said, where you can somewhat see evolutionary type things take place is where we do our selective breeding to keep traits the same in certain species. And that's a lot of farm animals, even horses, because they favor traits, so they control the breeding between them. Well, you're evolving those horses to make them look the way you want them to look. That's evolution. Okay, and you're shortening up the time of it by controlling how they breed. Selective breeding. We do it with dogs and horses and all kinds of things. Now even plants. I do it with the corn and soybeans and all to get them to get the best yields on the farm. To control the genetics. Okay, the diversity of life on Earth today is the result of evolution through time. Okay, so that's what this tree over here is trying to show you. As you go through time, more and more diversity. However, our trouble today has been with the impacts we've had on the environment. We have started impacting a lot of species on Earth and in fact killing some off because of how we overpopulated areas. Okay, like at one time, there were no living wolves out west at all, and now the wolves have been introduced and doing well. We also lost eagles and was able to bring eagles back. Okay, adaptation is an important trait for animals. Either they adapt or they die out. Okay, so through time, if animals cannot adapt, then that population will die out. And that does happen. It happens naturally, and it's also happened because of the things we've done by encroaching on their environment. But you call it adaptation, the process in which organisms adapt to the environment. Okay, they do naturally do it on, and you can think of that even as how is a polar bear adapted to its environment? Well, it's got a nice thick hide on it. Well, now that's becoming a problem if we're going into global warming because that thick hide is not favored for very warm temperatures. So either the polar bears will adapt to the new climates that are developing, or we'll lose our polar bears. Okay, so adaptation is totally dependent on what's going on in the rest of the environment, and particularly climate-wise. Okay, what the climate overall looks like. Another term for this is survival of the fittest. Okay, only the fittest survive through time. Okay, with all organisms. Okay, and then natural selection, it's the same, it goes right along the same line. Natural selection is a process that enables evolution. Okay, so as the organisms that can't survive through time, they kind of disappear. Well, naturally, the environment selects out for the organisms that do make it through time. That's what natural selection actually is. And in the process of natural selection, only the fittest survive. Okay, to the conditions that they're in. Okay, so like you can see this take place like if something was a wetland and that wetland was dried up because we wanted to dry it up because we wanted to build in that area. Well, a lot of those species are just going to die out because they can't adapt to the fact you took all the water away. Okay, from there, it's no longer a wetland, it's a dry land. So them wetland species either move along or they all die out. And we've done that in a lot of areas, and that's caused us to lose some species. Okay, and I think that wraps it up. Okay, that's another week. Hopefully you can see this video, okay? Let me know because I've had to change platforms from Zoom to Teams. So if you're not seeing this well or it doesn't look as good, let me know and I'll see if I can do something else. Have a good week.